Hey folks, Jason Dukes, Dirt Race Life. In this video, we're going to cover installing a few more tubes on a roll cage, and then we're going to move to some good stuff that's really important. Our full containment race seat. We're going to cover how to create an installation system that is functional, that is easily accessible, and that we can have confidence in the safety of, both for the seat itself and the safety harnesses. Stick around. Got the dash bar in, and what I did on this dash bar is I've got a limit of a 40-inch deck height on this car, and I'm pretty much going to build the deck of this car dead level. And then of course when I enter in the turns, soft right front spring, tie down shock, it's going to turn over quite a bit. But like going through tech, it's pretty much going to sit dead level because I want that big 40-inch sail on the side of the car, all the way down the side of the car, not just at the tail of it. And so I set the top of this tube at 39 inches from my datum floor on the jig, and just right under it. And probably because what we'll do is we'll just weld on some tabs onto the tube itself. We'll never drill a hole directly into the roll cage to mount the body. We'll never do that, but we'll weld on some tabs to mount the deck to it. It'll make it good and strong. That way, for any reason we gotta push around, we gotta climb over the car or anything, we'll mark and know the spot where this is at, where we can step on top of the car. So that's it, roughly 39 inches to the top. The next thing I want is this third leg. I went ahead and I bent a tube. I've got it bent to the same angle. It matches up with this one. We're going to set it right in here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to figure out, I've got a slight angle right here. And what I want to do is I'm wanting the foot of this to match my roll cage, that 30 inches there. I'm going to take and drop a plumb bob, measure it to my jig where the plumb bob is, and then I'll turn around and put the plumb bob on this dash bar right here and mark that spot. And that's where the base will be. And then it's just a matter of getting my measurement for my triangulation and set the angle. And once I figure that angle out, I can mark to cut my mouth on the bottom. Then after I get the mouth on the bottom, I'll take and cut it back and cut the mouth for the top and fit this tube in. And that will be this front leg here. So let's get busy with that. Oh yeah. Okay, so we're going to get a measurement here. From the outside of my tube to my plumb bob right here. Just measured to my jig. 28 3/4. So now that we've got that, turn around and put it on the front. So we get that same measurement. I've already lined it up. So now I'm going to mark my dash bar. So now I know that if my tube is here on my dash bar, that it's going to match up with my upper halo. That should work out where that when I turn the top in, it should be just about the same on both sides. It should look about right. It's going to be safe regardless, but it'd look better if I can get the angles right. I'm just going to lay it up here, and if we're not completely nuts, it should look right. So let's see if I can get it to get directly on that line and on that line. If I don't shake the cage, it may sit there. Let's see. Let's see what that looks like. Thumbs up, buddy. We're going to trim that, put the mouths in it, weld that up. We are notched up and ready to go. Okay, done. The next tube we're going to put in is the rear main horizontal on the rear hoop. This tube right here, I've already cut it, I've already notched it, took a lot of the scale already off of it. It's going to have a lot of welding on it, so I went ahead and knocked a lot of the scale off before I even put it up here. I'm running a 1/2 degree uphill on this, so I'm slightly above 39 inches from the datum on the floor where this is going. I'm going to put it in, and we'll line it up, stitch it up, set it level. Should look right here as well. Yep. Top of that tube, the center of that tube is 26 inches. Top of this square tube, the center of this tube is 26 inches. And I'm eyeballing, looking between the front and the back tubes, because if it's off any at all, you'll see it when you shoot, your eye across there. And it's straight. Make sure you get these mouths right on these tubes. Why do you put a horizontal tube across right here? Why not just diagonals? Specifically, you are transferring pressure from your door bars straight across. You want this to carry, and you want to be able, if you take a really hard hit in your door bars, you want to make sure that you've got a main tube in here that you've tied on several places, and you're getting that load carried out across your cage. You do not want to have just diagonals or something in a way that could fold in. So it's just not, this tube has nothing to do with the top folding over. When you make squares like this, it can fold. This tube right here is specifically about a heavy impact, right there, you got your shoulder over there, you're in your seat, you take a really heavy impact right to the mid-side of your body as far as in the roll cage. You want something that's going to maximize the ability to transfer that load out across your cage. That's why you put a horizontal. To me, this tube is a requirement regardless of how you design it. This one's got to be in there. So let's see, over here, something else that's coming up, when we start finishing this car out, it's a couple of things. The Crate Racing USA changed the rules in 2021 to allow 0.08 thousandths aluminum around the cockpit instead of steel. But now I'm opting to not do that. I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to go with the traditional 20 gauge. Because for one thing, when I'm going to put steel in right here, and it may be paranoia, but you can tear one of these rear lower control arms loose, and that's sitting right behind your seat. And so, I'm going to put a plate in here, and that's going to be fully welded in. I want protection behind me. Of course, my seat is thick. It's a good seat, don't get me wrong. But then a sheet of steel, fully welded in, and then that also creates a gusseting effect on this whole area. And so that's one of the reasons that I like, sheet steel in my floorboard. Really, it's for safety. You can go over the top of another car, and something really ugly can come up through your floorboard. So I want it fully welded in. I want that protection there. But yeah, just keep thinking about that stuff. If your cockpit is rearward, it helps give you a little bit of margin to be able to add more weight. You can, as you start getting toward the rear of the car, you can start getting beefier and beefier. But just keep in mind, you don't want weight hanging way out in extreme areas. So if it's condensed, compact, and in the rear, it's probably okay. You can probably put quite a bit. Let's get that all shot.
internally.
Now that we've got this rear horizontal in, the next thing I want to do is I want to temporarily mount up the seat. And the reason we want to move to the seat now with so few bars is a couple of reasons. For one, I have to work out my plan to make sure that all the rest of my tubes are not interfering with where I'm physically going to be. And also thinking about if I get into a violent wreck, where my limbs could end up swinging to and everything. Be thinking about all that. And some of them you're not going to be able to avoid, but like coming up with a plan where that you can pad them to deal with it, which is not ideal, but you know, you could have that situation. So recognizing that all up front and trying to work out the best plan. I want to be able to know exactly how far out that I want to put my side door bars and everything. And then also, before I put any other bars in it, this is a trap you can fall into. There's a lot of short bars, like this rear, all of this work, that's like easy work. And you're like, well, I could go ahead and I could be working on this stuff. Don't. And the reason why is because some of the hardest bars to get bent and get right are going to be these door bars right here. Because, you know, when you're turning angles on, turning in bends on both ends, you need to make sure that you're hitting everything perfectly. Not off a little bit, not fudging, not put a little bit more bend here or there, not heat it up, none of that. And so if you don't have any of the rest of your tubing put in yet, that's going to help drive you to not want to just live with something you're not happy with. You know you're going to be cutting up a lot of short tubing anyway, so if you don't like how one of these door bars looks, scrap it. Do another one, because you know you're going to reclaim that tubing. You know, that's going to help keep you from having to stop and go back and order or have to make a trip to buy more tubing, you know, because you came up short. And so for that reason, mount up the seat. I'm going to go ahead and work out the floor mounts here, figure out my seat belt mounts, the rear of the seat and everything while I've got plenty of room. Nothing's in my way, and I can make sure I get this stuff right. It's very important that the seat itself is firmly secured to the cage and the frame. That, you know, I've got combinations working where that this is all tied together really well. Very important that you're confident in how your seat belt mounts are done. So if you do them at this point, you got a lot of room. You can put it where it needs to be for safety, not where it will go because you've already built all this other stuff and it's in the way. So with that said, I put in a piece of plywood here on this floor, and I think about where the seat is. What I'm thinking is I want this seat at this upper height of this 1.5" 14 gauge square tubing. And so I'm just going to kind of mock that up and lay in a piece of a board, an 1.5" board here. And so I've kind of created that floor, and I've got my seat. I do use a full containment. I do strongly recommend a full containment seat. This is a Kirky 88. Of course, it's 18.5 inch. They make this in like from a 14 through an 18.5 inch on the width. That's the width at the back of it. I think this is an 18-degree layback. But I want to make sure that I am standing this seat up very straight. I'll actually have this seat up at about 16 degrees instead of 18. Probably a little bit forward. When the 0 point is right here in the bottom of the seat. If you were setting it exactly where it was designed, I believe this would be 0 right across that floor right there. But I'm going to be tilted just a little bit forward. I like to sit up in the seat. You hear people say, get up on the wheel. Well, the easiest way to get up on the wheel is to make sure you're sitting up in the seat. But sitting here, that is working out to what I was looking for. I'm not so much worried about this direction right now because I'm trying to make sure my floor is good. All right, my rear tube right here. I will not be putting my seat belts across the top of this tube. And the reason being is, when your seat belt comes across your shoulder, you do not want it angled up. You really don't even want it flat. You want it just a little bit of angle downhill there. and read up on that, study for yourself. Your safety is your responsibility. But for me, I'm going to mount this seat, and I'll make sure when I mount it, I don't actually put it against the tubing. I'll make sure I have me a gap right here, and we'll put a slot in where the seat belts can come back through. And then what we'll do is we'll make us a good, strong bracket that comes out here to mount the seat belts to. But my main focus is the bottom and the height that I'm thinking across this top of this plate for the seat mount. That is going to work. The angles are going to work out. Another thing I see here is I'm going to be able to mount some plates on the front of my tubing here and drill holes through them for my rear seat mounts. That's going to work out real good. So that's fine. As far as where they're going to be, this is going to be really simple. I'm going to put a plate on the floor, and I'm going to come out, and what I'm looking for here is I want to work this out to where that my fifth point from my belt, I've got a good bolt-in spot for it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 12-inch plate in and put the square tubing in front of that, so I'll be 13.5 inches off of this face right here. And that 13.5 inches is going to put a piece of square tubing right across this front where I can drill it and put a bolt through it and put my 5th point seat belt right down through there, and it'll be right on the spot, right where it needs to be. And so I know what to do. I don't really need to take any more measurements, mark anything past that. So let's put the floor in. Basically, I'm going to put a piece of 14 gauge 1.5 inch square right here. I'll bolt a bolt into the front of it for my 5th point seat belt, the sub belt I believe they call it. I'll put a bolt through the front of it here. Seat belt installation will be straightforward because my floor pan will be lower here, so that's going to be inside of the cockpit with this bolt here, and then my floor will be above here with the seat bolted to it. We'll use a much thicker piece of steel on this back because we're going to do a couple of things here. One is we want a thick enough piece of steel that when I bolt directly to it with the seat, it's structural in nature. So if I use 20 gauge right here, then, you know, if we're in a violent wreck or something, you know, me and the seat both are possibly deflecting. The 20 gauge is giving, it's bowing back and forth like a speaker would. We don't want that. And so we're going to go with a thick piece of steel here. I'll measure it and see what it is. We'll put it in here in a second. Another point is that putting a little piece of thicker right here, this becomes like a gusset in this corner. Think about a really hard hit right into the corner down below my driver's side door bars. This is going to make me, my seat, and all be tied together in a way where that it can't fold in on me. Which there's a lot of structure going on here, but weight right here doesn't hurt me. This is where, you know, I don't want a lot of weight really low, but I have no problem, like from a safety standpoint, if a little bit more or a little bit thicker back in this area is going to up the safety, this is a good place to spend, you know, the weight is back here for safety. So no issues there. This flat over here is going to be 12 inches, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a slot on it level, and then I'm going to turn around and level and square it up and stuff on the other side. Check. Make sure I'm not too high. I could be too high. I'm sure I didn't hit that on the money. I'm on the money, y'all. And I hit it. I can't believe that. Hold it with thumb. Stick her down. So we got our 1.5 inch tube in. Next up, we got a 12-inch wide plate we're gonna put right here on top. Here's our piece prepped out, ready to go. This is a salvage piece. It's been powder coated, so I had to do a lot of grinding to get the edges cleaned up on it for welding. This is 80 thousandths thick, so this is a fairly robust piece of steel to go under my seat here and bolt my seat to, and provide some safety and protection. So I've got it cut and trimmed, ready to go. It's going to sit right in this cradle, and I'm going to make sure. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to get the corners a couple of inches around, and then we'll work on the seat, and then we'll come back. I got a little bit of gapping right here on this edge, and I mean, I'll leave that if I have to, just a little bit of joint gapping in place there. I may lay a piece of steel in and cover it, just according to how it looks when it's done. Kind of hard to match that angle. It's not really it's not a radius of any type I could match very easily. Alright, so I'll probably just stop there and let that cool, and then come back to it. Yeah, I will weld the whole thing in. I'll weld it in solid, but I'll let it cool a little while, and then I'll put some more in it. On this plate, like on this corner right here, I was looking at where the seat was coming across, the actual ridges on the bottom of the seat. So I cleaned these welds off, and I want to make sure that I don't have a situation to where the weld is sticking up and it's actually going to, rub a hole in my aluminum or cut through the aluminum or anything. So that's the reason for you to see this stuff grinded off. There's a rule: try not to grind your welds, because you never know when you want to pass your car off to somebody else or something, and then if you're grinding welds down, they're going to be questioning the quality of that weld. So there's a rule: try not to grind all your welds off unless you need to for a particular reason. I say that because I got some guys that call me out on it, and rightly so. Nothing wrong with that. Alright, here's what I've done. I put this plate here on the inside. This isn't going to go here, but what I want to do is I'm wanting to set my seat in a position and not be on the tubes, because more likely I want to mount in my seat mounts here, and then I'll use spacers to space the seat forward. I don't want to actually lay it against the tube and the tube be sitting there rubbing against each other. Over time, one metal cut through the other, nothing like that. So that's the reason that plate's there. We got the one on the floor. I'm going to put the seat up here, and it sits flat to the plate on the bottom, just like I want. And so now I'm just going to sit it up against this plate, make sure it's flat, and it is. And then let's see where our angles is at. Alright, so that shows like 71.7 right there. So it's right at, and you say, well, from 90, so it's right at 18 degrees. And this is an 18-degree seat, so it's sitting fairly close to the stock location for the seat. And that is fitting really good. All my angles, the back of the seat and everything, it's all lining up. So let's talk about this next part before I mark and drill the holes. I'm going to live with that. Alright, so let's take a move here, folks. And let's look to the front. Maybe I can hopefully show you all this, what we're after here. Okay. Here's what I'm after. Here's what I'm after. The steering sector is right here, okay? And the most perfect geometry. So every U-joint that you have to, put in on your steering, every angle that you make in your steering and everything, that's making your steering linkages rods move. They're going to move along the length of the shaft back and forth as they articulate through turn through that U-joint and everything. So I want to minimize that as much as I can. The smoother I can make the steering, the better. Definitely on these really dry, slick tracks, I saw a real improvement in my ability to handle my car as I started improving all of my steering geometry. It's really important. So here's the point. It's right off this corner. This is where my sector knuckle is going to come out. And I'm going to run it actually low under this control arm right here, back. And I want to line up. I want to basically have my head in line parallel with where that is. And that's kind of my design here. I'm sitting as far, I want to be as far toward the center of the car as I possibly can. And when you get in line with that, you see a lot of cars where they're sitting over here on this edge and they've actually got this steering wheel out and their steering column is got an angle going across to it, and I don't like that. I want all my weight centralized. I want my profile for my cage to be as tight and slim as possible. Weight sideways outside the wheels matters just like weight outside the wheels front and back. It matters. The tighter I can make all of my weight in the center of my car, the better the car is going to handle. And so I'm looking at this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a plumb bob, and I'm going to plumb bob this location off the front and get this measurement off of the edge of the jig. And then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to plumb bob off of the center of this seat at the back, and I'm going to move this seat until I get to that exact same location. And provided it's workable, I've got a box coming up around my drive shaft right here and everything, but provided it's workable, that's where my seat's going to be. If I have to deviate from it, I will. But I mean, shoot for perfect and then deviate as much as necessary from that, unless it's too much, and then, you know, change your plan. And I'm just going to drop that plumb bob right across there. Yep, that's about right. It literally cuts right across the corner. About one inch out from the frames where it was. And, you know, as far as the accuracy of this part, you know, a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, that's great. You know, if you're 2 or 3 inches off, you know, yeah, deal with that. That's 22.5 right there. So if we're 22.5 there, and we'll turn around and let's see where our seat's at right now. So what I'll do here is I'm just going to drop this right across the top of my seat. Make sure I am actually, yep, that's right in the center. And we're going for 22.5 right here. Let's see where we are. So right now I'm about 21.5. Let's see, can I go over more? I can probably go some. Get this straight up as I can. So I got it. I'm pushing the seat back to get it where all these angles kind of fit in together. I'm sliding it over. And there's two things we're after. I have to make sure it's parallel as well. One thing at a time. All right. Yep. Still straight. Right here. Let's see where we're at. So I'm at about 22 right now. That's my point. That's about as close as I can get, because I'm right on my tunnel. My tunnel needs to be right on the outside of my frame right here. So my tunnel is going to come up right beside this seat. and the seat belt's going to bolt. I'm going to put a bigger piece in right here that the seat belt's going to bolt to. We'll make sure we've got room to do the bolt up for the seat belt. But I can't get to 22. I can't get to 22 and a half. I can get to 22, and that's about as good as it's going to get. Now, an important point. There's a little bit of angle in that, but I'll put that angle up in this rod for the steering column up front. I will make sure that this rod here is truly parallel to me. That way my steering wheel is not cocked to one side or the other. That'll really mess you up. Your steering wheel should be square in your hands. So like wherever this elbow is at on this side, it should be on this side. You should be square in your hands. As you're turning, you don't want to have, as you're spinning your steering wheel, if there's angle in this column here, you don't want to turn that wheel and be going forward with one hand and then in with the other. And that's what happens if you're not square with your steering wheel. Regardless of the angle tilt of it, you don't want to have this odd effect where that one arm is moving in and out more than the other. So you want to have it square. So I will put that 1/2 inch of deviation, which is very little, but I'll put it down here. I'll make sure this rod is square to me. And now I've got to make sure it's parallel. And so that gets into this 2x2 on the rear here that we will cut the center of that out. That's coming up. But really simple to check for parallel here. Because I know it's perfectly square to the car. I can just take a measurement off a known point on the seat. So like for example, this is 20 3/16 to the outside of the rib over here. And that one's going to be hard to get to, but I think I can do it. So it's 20 3/16 on that side. And on this side, I'm 20 1/4. I'll give it just a little bit of twist. It's going to move around more than that anyway, yep. And also want to make sure, let's make sure, let's see, what do I need? Oh, square, that'll work. Get this square over here. To make sure when I come straight up this tunnel, yeah, see I can't even hardly do that. See how I'm tunneling over just, I gotta move just a hair more over. Yeah, that I can do. That tunnel only comes up, my tunnel right here only comes up about, I think it's like 4 inches from the top, 6 inches from the bottom. Yeah, my tunnel's right in here, so I'm fine with that. Yeah, let's see where that's. So we're probably gonna have about 3/4 of an inch difference. Let's see. Yeah, about 3/4 of an inch over this way from true center to the steering column. And make sure you're sitting good and square. Parallel to the rear. Looks good. Looks good. Let's check it here. Now let's see what we got. Yep. Let's see where we're at. Yep. I love it. So, now that we got that, all I'm going to do is, so I got it where I want it. It's sitting flush to the floor, it's sitting flush to the back. It's within about 1/8 inch of being square here, which I know it's really close because it's sitting flush to this rear. And I know that's square. So now I'm just going to take and mark these 2 holes. Not going to mark anything up here yet. That's going to be next. But we've got that. So, All right, so we've got our holes. Drill the holes, then we'll mount it back again temporarily. Okay, all right, so now put a couple holes in here. Get this temporary shim out of the way. I just use 3/8 bolts here. Now for final assembly, good bolts, 3/8 are fine, but like for this right here, you know, I am going to put like a fender washer under this. Well, but so I'm just going to take and drop those in. Let's see. Another point to consider on my Camaro. One thing I did on the Camaro, I actually spot welded my nuts to my plates. And the reason I spot welded my nuts to my plates is so that I can take the seat in and out to change belts or do anything. I didn't have to have two people, but I realized that I could do it without having to spot weld them on, just by clamping a pair of vice grips on, which keep them from turning around because the vice grips can hang up. So you can get around that. I don't think I'm gonna spot weld these on. Okay, so now that we've got it in place, I'm going to sit it forward. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a marker, and I've got two mounting holes that go through this seat. And we're going to take and we're going to mark our main tubing for our cage at where those are. So we'll take and put a mark here and here. Now, this doesn't have to be very precise. We're basically just putting a mark to know where to put two mounting plates, because as far as the drilling goes, for where the exact hole is, we'll mount the seat back up and drill through the seat and it's already there mounting hole to get the plate right. So no big deal there. We're just trying to do that right there. And you think about it, you're doing all this, and if you've got a seat and the car is already built, all of this stuff right here becomes a total nightmare. It becomes a pain in the tail for sure. So, if you're building a new car, remember this: stop and do your seat while you've still got all of this stuff negotiable. Okay, so we got a couple marks. I'll bring those on up. Okay, so I'm looking at this, and I've got my two marks, and these are where my bolts are going to go through. Okay, and I'm thinking about it from a standpoint of what kind of plate am I going to put here in order to mount the seat to it. And the plate itself, we can get thick enough there that we don't have to worry about that, you know, getting torn or ripped. The weld itself, we're fine. If we had a problem in some type of a violent collision or a roll, it's going to be that the weld itself tears loose from the tubing. That would be how that would happen. Now we have another consideration. As I said, the seat belts is going right through here under this tube. And so looking at it, I'm thinking the best solution here is going to be a plate, maybe a piece of square tubing, maybe some 3/4 inch square tubing underneath right here. I'm tied in over here. This piece acts as a gusset to it. It's not going to get torn out. This side over here, I'm thinking a gusset perpendicular to the tube, this way, a gusset tying on to this one. And between that and a bottom plate, like a bottom bar across here, that's going to give me something. I got a piece of 20 gauge steel that's going to go on this back wall right here. And so that gives me something to tie to, and then also keeps my seat belts from rubbing against it and getting chafed. We're going to have all smooth edges all the way around this. It's going to be like a mail slot right here. And we want all smooth edges where that our seat belts are pulled across and they're not getting frayed by anything. So let's get to it. I made me a couple squares, little coupons here. This is 3/16 steel, 188. So this is much thicker where the back of this seat is mounted up. And we're going to mount these two squares under this tubing. I've got it marked where they go. And I'm going to use a guide again here for this. One thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little bit of my weld off. I'm going to take a little bit of my weld off right there on that corner where it lay down. I want it to lay down good and flat. Get that coupon out. That's probably enough. As a rule of thumb, I don't like grinding welds away unless there is a requirement for it. The reason being is, when I sell a car, if a weld's been ground away, then there's a question of, was there an issue there? And does it need to be addressed? And if you leave the weld, then everybody can see what your work looks like, and there's no question about whether or not it's satisfactory. They can tell whether or not they're satisfied with it. So, ground welds off unless you've got a reason for it. A couple of places on ground welds is anywhere for fit up, and like under this seat right here, I ground this down flush in places just with the seat to sit down on it. Make sure you got a reason and make sure everything is right. It's got to be right. So, I got that in there just so that I can take it, put these, and I know they'll be flush to that front face, and we'll weld them in. They should be good. Yeah, they'll be fine. So you see I got my coupon right in behind here. I'm using this piece of plate steel to level it up. I cannot weld this completely in all in one run, or I'll just turn it away. But I can spot it in. There's that. Now there's that one. I'll put it this way. Turn it off, goes over here. Got another one. Kind of a deep crevice there to be welded in. So there. So I'll take this scat off. As I'm welding them, they're going to want to pull, so we want to cut down on that as much as possible. So I've got some good solid welds on the front now. Again, this pocket right here, this is where the seat belts are going. They're going to come right through there. I'll let that cool a little bit, then I'll come back, and I've just got like an inch in the center, and I'll get the two edges from the front. Back. I'm just eyeballing down through here to see if those are right. Yeah, they look good. They look good. I'm thinking, yeah, 1.5 inch square right here. That's what I'm thinking. 1.5 inch square right here. And that is, cut me a piece of 1.5 inch square. That's 15 inches right there. And then I'm going to add a 1/2 inch because that's 1/3 of the diameter of the tube, which is how much we'll probably wrap around. So I'm going to cut a piece 15 and 1.5 inches of square tube, and I'll get that cut and shaped up, and then we'll come back to you. All right, prepped and ready to go, and then all we gotta do is butt it up and line it up here. So, line it up right here. Did a little, I'm just eyeballing this. Not the end of the world. Right there. So there's a spot there. Push it up here. Our coupons haven't bent out on us. You need this one got twisted. Yep, they look good. So, give this a little burn right back here. Alright, stick this end piece in. Alright, so here's our gusset going on the end here. And just already got it cut and ready to go. We'll put it in place and we'll spot it and then we'll trim it up. Alright, so I've put my gusset in here on the end. I've sealed this tube up. My rule of thumb is any tube that is sealed, so if the tube can't drain, don't drill it and put a rivet in it, because if you drill it and put a rivet in it, then you're going to fill it up with water, then over time it's going to rust out. So any sealed tube, so if you've got a tube that you're going to have to put rivets in, first, it can't be one of your critical safety structure tubes. Just can't be if you're going to put rivets in it. And then second, if you're going to mount rivets to it, make sure it's open and can drain. All right, so this is sealed up. We'll put tabs off of it if we've got to put any rivets in it. And I've got my 2 plates in here. Those are 3/16 thick plates. That's a 14 gauge tube right there. That's just that 080 material on the end for the gusset, tied in solid. I smooth the whole face of it off where it won't eat up the aluminum on the seat. MIG this all the way in, all the way around. This is this 080 plate here. And I went ahead and I cleaned it up. Just didn't want the big weld across it, sitting the seat on it, eating the bottom of the seat up. And two, just for cleaning it off and everything, it's going to be a lot easier for me to wipe this out down without a big weld across here. But because of that, I am going to take a marker, and I'll do it in a minute, but I'll take a marker and I'll mark underneath that weld. So I'll probably go back underneath here on the bottom side and put some 1-inch gap welds around it, just because I ground that down on the face to make sure that it's solid. This is a safety piece right here. This is protecting me from protrusions from underneath. There'll be another piece that gets welded in here. It'll be 20 gauge. All right, so the next thing we gotta do is, yep, here's that marker. I'll go ahead and, if you got something that you're gonna weld by your seat, like I'm gonna flip this whole chassis upside down when I get done, and anything upside down that I really want to get a good weld on, so like a weld on that. If you got something that you're not welding at that moment, mark it, write it on there, that way you won't miss it later. With me, once I sleep, I forget everything that I was trying to remember. Okay, so I'm gonna put the seat back and mark our spots to drill it, and then also the seat belt. Set it up here. Got a couple of bolts. We'll just drop them through the holes. All right. And I'm just going to take and mark it. And then the center of it, I'm going to mark the center, which is right here. That's the center of this seat. All right, so this is center for my shoulder seat belts, and then go ahead and mark for the seat belts down here. We'll take and we'll mark where. So what I'm gonna do is where my hole is right here, my holes that come through from my seat belts. I'm gonna put my bolt right dead at that rear of that. That's where I'll have that. And it may be different for you if you're a lot smaller frame, smaller hips, and sit back deeper in the seat. You may want to have that back further, but for me, I'm just going to mark it there and come around here and do the same. I want my plates to be right here. We'll put a plate in there. Good to go. Oh, and I forgot one more. Dadgummit. I like to forgot that last one. My sub belt. Just set that check it right quick. I got a submarine belt. Right there. Again, get all this stuff in here while you're building this short up. Sure makes it easier. That is better. Okay. Now we got all our seat mounts done. And we need a seat belt mount here, a seat belt mount here, and here. Okay, seat belts. Of course, we drilled the front for the sub right here, and then on the two sides, I measured, and this is the back of the opening where this is. It's 7 inches off of this back right here is the center. What I did was, this is the 3/16 plate steel that I've got, and I went ahead and I made 3 holes in it, 1 inch apart and 1.5 inches off the base. I'm going to tie this right here on the angle matching the seat, and I'm going to put the center of the hole where my belt's going to be, just in case the seat changes, the hole's slightly different. I went ahead and did 3, and then also just in case I have a hole or a nut go bad, and you'll see that nut in just a second. I got a backup plan as well. But tie that down. I'm gonna put some gussets on the front of it right here. Solid tied, everything's solid tied. This has got to be super solid. And so anyway, so 3/16 steel plus gussets for that. And on this side, it's actually the frame component. If you look, this is this corner that we had cut out. And so what we did was, this works out to be this angle and this angle. It's the same. This is going to be about 1 inch over, but it's fine. What I did was, I figured out, excuse me, where that hole was. And I took and I made this one first, matched it up, made the 3 marks. I put the 3 holes in, and then I blind nutted the back of it. And so what you can see here, if you look, you see, so we've got 3 1/2 inch nuts here on the back that are welded in, and that way, that's going to make it so much easier to change the seat belts as well, because you know, you think about it, you reach down in there, and you know, if you would have to pull the seat out necessarily if you're trying to lay down in here and nut and bolt it. But with this being a blind back, you know, grade 8 bolt, big washer, big lock nut, put your new seat belts in. They go in, ties in solid. Same thing, I'll show it. We're going to put these 3 blind nuts on the back of this one here the same way. That way, we can just reach in with a wrench. I mean, you could sit down in the seat and just take a wrench in your hand and get it loose and back the bolt out, put another one in, put your new seat belts in, lickety split, no issue. And if you've got to use 2 wrenches and you're trying to reach in behind you and be in the seat and you can't get your other hand in there, I know this from experience. That's why I changed and started doing it this way. These little things like this is the difference between a car that is okay and a car that you craft that you love. It's this little stuff like this that makes it so much easier to deal with. Take the time on the front end, you get this stuff in, you'll appreciate it through the life of the car. So let me show you on those nuts. It's really simple. And all I do is I just got some older bolts here. I just drop them in. And of course, I already drilled this and got it prepped and ready. Got it cleaned up, got all the mill scale off, ready to go. Clean these nuts up, same deal. And when you're welding these nuts up, now I don't know exactly as far as the heat goes, what effect it has on the nuts. So I can't say as far as that. I'm comfortable with it, but now I don't weld these things cherry red and keep on. I spot them and get in there and I get out of there. But yeah, okay. So tighten them up, square them up. And I'll just do them right here, right now. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. That's it. And so now that's one less headache that you have to deal with throughout the life of the car. That's fixing to get really hot really quick. Let's see if I can get them out of there before it starts transferring all this heat through. The heat has made it through. That's how I should have done that. There we go. I've learned not to leave those bolts in there. If you spot a nut on like that, go ahead and get the bolt out while it's hot, because like I don't have any anti-seize or anything on those bolts. And everything cools down and it'll just go slunk and it will just seize in there. So yeah, when I put these on the car, of course when I put the seatbelt bolts in, I'll put anti-seize on them and everything. I don't have any issue with it. 1/2-inch bolts is great. I've used 7/16 on some stuff, but I went ahead and went with 1/2-inch on this. Alright, so we'll get that one on there, put a gusset in it, and then we'll get on that top one right there. And it goes. Let's see, I need, oh, that's what I need right there. Come here, Betsy. So I've got a piece of steel. I got a piece of steel that's coming up right here. And so I've got to make sure that my nut is just inside that, and that it all works together in unison. And I'll line this up, and then we're going to make sure that everything correlates. We definitely want gussets on this. We want to spread that load out. Put y'all right there. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to do one in one direction and one in the other. I'll show that in just a second. It should help pull it forces too. Okay. That looks good. All right. I'll show y'all what I'm doing here. I want to have absolute confidence. So I backed one gusset backwards, one gusset forward. Think about the way that these seat belts are being pulled. They're being pulled in that direction, that way. So that's what we're doing here. Come around here. Take a look at it from over here. And you can see. So you see those gussets. And I'm happy with that. Bolts. I'm going to bolt into this center one. I'm going to be pulling back and up in this direction. Remember, this is 14 gauge tube right here. This is 80 thousandths plate here. You want to make sure you got lots of contact surface area according to what you're tying to. Make sure you're tying enough. Like for our plate over here, you know, where, like I said, I got those tied in the back. Well, that's like 90 thousandths is what the frame is. And then I'm going to be well tied in, bridged into everything here, so I'm fine with that. This side over here I want it to be good. And then of course the submarine is just completely through this 1.5 inches right here. Alright. On this back part here, what I'm thinking is we're going to take an 1.5 inch tube and come out, and we're going to turn down. And I'm going to have a plate right here, and we'll show that next. Alright, let's talk about our shoulder harnesses. So what I've got here is I got a piece of 1.5 inch tubing, and I put a bend in it, so like I did like a 45-degree bend. And then what I did was I put it in a chop saw and I cut it off parallel with the tube. Then I took a 4x6 piece of 3/16, okay, good stiff steel here. I drilled me 3 holes across it, 1/2 inch holes. I MIG'd that on, sitting on a bench, took my time, got that one burned in really good. This is seat belts, y'all, so remember that. The reason, so why is it 3 holes? Well, like the seat belts that I'm running now, the shoulder harnesses are separate from each other, but then I've also run them before that were like a Y, where you'd have 1 bolt in the middle, and I just went ahead, put 3 in like that, so that I got my bases covered. Now the other thing, this is where this is going at. It's going to be on this main horizontal bar right here off the back. And you say, well, why so far? And here's the reason for that. So when we measure this, from that horizontal bar to that hole is about 9.5 inches. It's about, from that plate to the bar is like 6 inches. And the reason for that is because on these shoulder harnesses on your seat belt, you're going to have an H adjuster where that, you know, you're bolting that in, and then you're going to have an adjustment strap, and it's not the one for the front of the seat belt. It's the one that's back behind your shoulder. Well, our seat is right here in front. That we don't want to have that adjustment being right in this opening, and like possibly like it's hanging up in the opening, and we're tight. We think we're tight, but actually we're hung against the opening itself. and then we shift around during the race and slack comes in the belt all of a sudden. We don't want to have that happen. And so what we do is we want this to be out back here where that I've got this room so that I can get the exact adjustment I want. It's out, it's in the open back here, plenty of room. It's not trouble for us to set seat belts up, make adjustments for different drivers, whatever we need to do. Let's put that out there where we can. It's short, it's stiff, and for me, I'm totally happy with the safety element for this. Now, for the angle on me, I am going to put my digital level on it when I set the angle. Okay. So, I'm going to set my angle, put the triangle in place. I'm going to try to get this in one shot, one tack. And I'm going to set this downhill to 15 degrees, okay? I don't want this belt to be right at the top. Now my seat's going to be right here. And I want this belt to pull at 15 degrees, and my shoulders are right across the top of that seat is where I sit. And I want the belts to be angled slightly downhill off the back of my shoulder. I don't want to lift up in the seat, so to speak. So, I got the center of the seat mark here. I'm going to use a magnet right angle to get it square. And then what I'm going to do, now that I got that, is I'm just going to drop it to 15 degrees and try. I really need 3 hands. Now I'm going to take and turn it this way. Make sure I should be close because I cut that mouth to fit. I'm off about, I'm off a degree or 2. Let's see if I can just twist it out. Now that we got her spotted, we can kind of finagle it a little bit. That's right there. That's about 14 degrees. I'm fine with that. Let's make sure we're in the center. Make sure our 90 on both sides. Nothing funny going on there. Looks perfect. All right, let's stitch it up. The thing about it is, as far as, holding and everything, the belts are literally pulling the tube into the horizontal bar. So, it's a pretty beefy way to do it. And then the bolt itself, you're pulling across some shear on this bolt. So, I think your body's going to come in too before this stuff comes apart. Let's check our work out here. Now, on this plate in this corner, I'm not going to weld this in yet. The reason being is I'm likely going to have another piece coming out of it, and so we're going to leave that for right now, not stitched in. Okay, so let's take a little look here at what this looks like with the seat in place. So the way this works, here's the plate, and like I'm holding horizontal so you can see this 15 degree, and I want you to look. Do you see, that's hot. Do you see that seat? And do you see how that seat, and this is where the holes are, it's all lined up, but see how that bar and then the seat's there? My seat belts are going right through there, smooth. I'll make sure that this is smooth on this edge right here where it won't fray. So I'll round those off. And so this is going to be bolted here, the adjuster in here. Belts go right through that slot right there. And so think about, so now here on the front, they're going to come right over this top lip. And they're going to pull across here, my shoulders right here, and they're going to pull over my shoulders. And if I'm upside down, if I land on the hood, this bar is as close as it can be to my shoulder. So I have that minimum amount of deflection between where the belt is being held on a fulcrum and where the top of my shoulder is. That's as close as I can get. And that means that's as strong as that could be by doing that. Same deal right here. You see the 3 points with the seat here. And when you look in relationship, this is going to go right through this slot. And I've got a hole here, here, and here. And so I'll probably go in this middle hole. I could go in this back one. And I'm going to run that right through there with that pointed up and out through that angle. I'll come around here. Same deal over here on this side. I'm angled with the seat. I got 3 holes, and the center one's pretty well at the edge. This is a little rear, this is a little forward. Same deal. I'm going to go at an angle up through this hole right here for this seat. This is as close. The closer these are, the less stress movement you're going to get between you and your connection point. And if a seat belt is failing, you know, then you start looking at what are the elements that are causing additional stretch. So there's your side shot of how that works. Coming down into here. Remember, the floor pan down here is going to be underneath. It's going to be underneath that bar. And so the seat's above it. Another reason for that is because I want my legs to go down. One of the things I realized is, personally, I'm not as comfortable when I've got my legs out or uphill to the pedals. I actually want to be like I'm sitting more in a regular vehicle. And so that's one of the reasons that I wanted a little bit taller, cage, that halo, being tall, plenty of room over my head, get that seat up, get some angle in my knees, be a lot more comfortable to drive. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this video. This one right here was kind of a turning point on our roll cage construction. I had to get this seat in where that we can get to the next part, working out the door bars and then also our diagonals across this side. And we'll show that in future episode that we're making because we want to work out like that elbow room and like what would happen like climbing out of the car and everything. Having this seat in was a critical point. Now the seat will come back out. This is the one that I'm currently running in my Camaro. And so, you know, we're going to work out and get the bars welded in on the next episode. And then, yes, that seat will come out. It won't be in this car the whole time we're constructing it. But it was kind of a turning point. Big deal. I'm sure glad I got this part done. I hope that this was helpful to y'all. If you like what you see here, hit the like button. Leave me a comment. I'm reading them all. They really do help me. I appreciate that. And hit the subscribe button. Help me build this channel. Thank y'all.